Over 60 flights, 19 countries on 5 continents, a few generous grants from my university, and one very lucky girl. Between a semester abroad in Sydney to a university-sponsored Thanksgiving in Bangkok, family time in Zagreb to research in Hong Kong, Seoul, and Tokyo, about half of one continuous year for me was spent abroad. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, how could a college student pull all this off? Well, it was only made possible with the support of my advisors and colleagues and the contributions of generous organizations at my university. Hi, my name is Julia, and today I'd like to share with you some of my most memorable stories from my time abroad and what they mean to me. I already knew the value in travel. What I didn't expect was the added value that came from doing it on my own. I know I'm incredibly lucky for these opportunities, and I've had the time of my life along the way. The first country I traveled to on my own was Fiji, on a layover, and I remember being simultaneously excited and a little hesitant. I didn't know how I would be perceived as an American woman in a country with a vastly different political system and lifestyle. At the airport, I was picked up to go to the beach by a man who had lived in Fiji all his life, and as we drove through the villages, he told me stories about his life and observations. What stood out to me most was this common notion of gratitude. He explained that many people in Fiji didn't own much past the necessities, many were not highly educated, and most had never even left the island in their lives. But to him and the others, it didn't seem to matter. They were just content and grateful for what they had. Along the beach, locals set up tents to sell handmade souvenirs, and at each, they seemed happier just to make conversation than a sale. In fact, they often promoted one another's items to me and would always shake my hand, thank me for visiting Fiji, and wish me and my family well. What would the world be like if we all stopped what we were doing to give someone our full attention when talking to them? Well, that's what I experienced in Fiji, and the camaraderie amongst the Fijians was like nothing I had ever seen before. Even the visitors always stopped to make conversation with the Fijians, smiling as they walked away and seeming unusually happy considering they were in Fiji, of course. What I experienced on that layover was not only a culture with precious values, but a transformative first independent adventure abroad that allowed me to come out of my shell. And coincidentally, 6 months later, I had a layover through Fiji once again when a man working at the airport recognized me, came up to me, shook my hand, and welcomed me back. What I realized is there were so many people abroad who were happy to talk to me just as I was to them, whether it was to help guide me in the right direction or even just give me an extra warm welcome. I felt this sense of warm welcome most strongly in South Korea. As soon as I stepped out of Seoul Station, an older Korean man approached me and asked where I was from, to which I replied the United States. He paused, smiled, looked into the sky, and proclaimed, "Hallelujah." During my time in Seoul, other Koreans echoed this message to me as they pulled down their masks to smile. What I realized is, even though I was on my own journey, I was never truly alone. There were so many friendly people who were willing to talk to me, and I realized that perhaps we underestimate that. But what always stood out to me the most on my travels was the immense kindness people have, especially those that have nothing to gain, and even when we don't speak the same language. I'll tell you a story. I was sitting at the bullet train station in Kyoto, Japan, recording some research findings for a university project. And an older Japanese couple, you can see them here, were sitting beside me for about half an hour when they eventually turned and started speaking to me in Japanese. And though I had no idea what they were saying, their body language conveyed this sense of warmth and curiosity. So I pulled out my phone and through Google Translate was able to convey that I was a 20-year-old American college student working on a university project in Japan. They smiled and nodded their heads in understanding, and were able to convey a few messages to me through the same means. We learned a little about one another's lives, and it was really nice being able to communicate in a way that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to. And as I had to get ready to board the train to Osaka, I stood up, gave them a small wave, and in traditional Japanese fashion, a small bow. And as I was standing by the train, just about to board, they approached me. And in the only English they spoke to me, said, "A present," handing me a bag of Japanese cookies. I was so touched. I glanced through the window on the train, hoping to find them, only to see they were looking for me too. I waved, caught their eyes, and as the train sped off, we continued waving until we were out of sight. Everything seems to come back to this basic sense of human respect for one another, regardless of our cultural differences on the outside. And even when we can't communicate with words, it's body language and also these gestures of kindness and generosity that not only say it all, but stick with us forever. I realized that many people were just as interested in learning about my life and why I was visiting their home as I was in learning about their life. And these types of one-on-one interactions during which I could fully focus were so valuable to me in learning. And touchingly, I found that so many people were so proud of their homes and most proud of the beliefs of their communities. A layover brought me to Doha, Qatar, and after walking around the city for a few hours, I stumbled upon a mosque. Inside, Muslim women wearing head and body coverings, revealing only their eyes, in order to emphasize their dedication and modesty, were giving tours. And seeing that I had just come out of over 110-degree humidity, a woman invited me to sit down and have a little conversation before walking around. And so we did. We got the chance to ask one another questions and learn a little bit about one another. She was stunned to hear that at 20 years old, and especially as a woman, I was able to travel internationally on my own. She shared that due to her Muslim identity and cultural norms, there were more barriers for her to do so, something I had never considered before. During my travels, I was able to relate to a remarkable variety of people, and I realized that where we differ, a lot of that comes from where we've been conditioned by our cultures, systematic differences, really. I've realized the importance of one's family, friends, and authority figures influencing their upbringing and perhaps inclining them to have a certain belief or set of actions. And I found that these interactions during which I could ask someone questions about their life on their own turf and hear their reaction to me talk about my life were so valuable to me in learning, so much more so than anything I could have learned from a book or from a lecture. At the end of the day, human nature takes predictable patterns no matter where we are. During my semester in Australia, I was able to spend a week hiking in Tasmania, and on the first night I made a new friend. Not knowing how strong of a bond we would share over time, we shared our hopes and dreams with one another and bonded over our mutual studies of film in college. So much so that he ended up traveling to Southern California to visit me and also expand his knowledge of the industry. Knowing someone who grew up 10,000 miles away from me but shares the same human nature opened my eyes to how similar we all really are at our core. We might have different ways of doing things, but at the end of the day, we're all just trying to do the best we can. Most of the time, when you travel with someone you get to know that person better, but maybe you don't notice or interact with interesting people in arm's length the way that you haven't met. For me, traveling abroad on my own was so valuable in so many ways, and I cannot recommend enough that you give an independent adventure a try. You might just find that you're in plentiful company on your own. Sometimes, the best travel partner is yourself. Thank you.